Hi everyone, I'm Roderberg and I'm part of the Blind Gaming Club, and today we're going to be doing a brief demo / tutorial in Eurofly 3, which is currently in beta and is an audio game for a flight simulator for blind and low vision people. So what we're going to be doing today is taking a flight in the first of the training flights, which is the Cessna C152. Now, when you start the game up, this is the first plane you train in, and we're going to go through some of the keyboard commands just to get you started. I'm not going to show you all of them because there's just so many, but I'll show you how to learn the basics of each new plane you get and how to find out what keys and stuff you need to press for that. So we'll just explain things as we go along, so let's get started and we'll go into it now.
Training.
Enter training dialog. Practice flights combo box 1.
Okay, so when you first go in, you will only have training and you'll only be able to select the Cessna 152. As I've already done the training for this today, I'll actually be flying what they call a practice flight. It'll be exactly the same as how you have to do it, only I won't be in training. I've already done it. But when you come in here, when you first start, that's all you can select. But because I have other planes, because I've finished the training, when you finish the training, they actually give you the plane and you can place it at any airport you like to fly later on. So to get to the training, once you've done one flight, you just press tab.
Filter edit.
Now the first one will take you to filter. You can type in the name of the plane that you're looking for, and then the next one is your training.
Training combo box Mooney M20J.
Now I'm training for the Mooney, which is the fourth plane. I'll be doing a video on that later on. And then the next one,
Reset training for Mooney M20J button,
is to reset your training. If you don't like the airport you're at because it's too far to fly to the next one, you can reset it. Or if you don't like the terrain because you're finding lots of mountains and things like that, or you're having trouble landing at the airports, you can reset it and move to a different one. But let's get into this plane and get started.
Practice flights combo box 1. Beechcraft 36 Bonanza. Cessna C152.
Okay.
Enter airport selection. Airport selection dialog. Select
Now we
airport
have to
combo
choose
box.
an airport. I'm
I'm
going to fly in Slovakia. I found that to be very good for these smaller planes because there's lots of airports around. As you get up, I move to different countries and different areas, but just going to press S to get to that in the alphabetical list, as it is just an alphabetical list.
S. St. Helena /James Samoa Saudi
And I want to go to Slovakia,
Saudi Senegal Serbia Slovakia Dominican Slovakia Dubova left Slovakia Holic left Haran LCHL right Haran.
And I just press enter to select.
0 dashboard.
Steering controls ready.
Okay, so when it loads in, as you heard, dashboard. Now that's just basically all the controls for your plane. Technically, there's nothing on the screen. It's just a blank screen. And when you open the drop-down menus and things, that's when sighted people will see it. So I've just left the screen as normal at the moment. Perhaps later on I'll put maybe a picture of a cockpit over it just so it looks pretty for the videos. But other than that, there's not really anything on the screen. And the other thing you heard was steering controls ready. Now that is because I have an Xbox game controller plugged in, which I use to fly the plane. I use the sticks to control the up, down, left, right, and there's a lot of other buttons that I do things. The triggers on the controller, I use that to turn the plane on the ground with the wheels, and just getting direction, speed, all that sort of thing comes in very handy. Saves a lot of stress of doing it on the keyboard. I just don't like trying to control the plane on the keyboard. So that's why you heard that, and I would recommend trying a controller if you have one. You can set it up in the settings to do all the different things on the buttons that you want it to do. Now, just for another thing, I use a program called Voice Attack to do voice commands. Now, what this means is I'll do a single voice command, which will then toggle on keys for me so I don't have to do it. So that's why I don't remember a lot of the keys, and I won't be telling you the keys. I won't be guessing what they are, because if I don't know what they are, I'm not going to confuse you more by telling you what they are and being wrong. So, but Voice Attack is not a very accessible program to set up. If you've got sighted assistance, you could possibly get somebody to help you. But other than that, it's not easy to set up. once it's set up, you can actually use voice commands to actually even use the program. I have individual profiles for each plane, and then in that profile I have a voice command to switch to those profiles, so I don't have to struggle using the actual program itself. But you're going to hear those commands, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I go along. But right now we're going to do the initial startup of the plane, which is to turn the computer on, the radio on, because you can't do anything until the computer's on. You don't actually need the radio on to do that, but I've got a startup command that does all that for me. So I'm going to turn that on now and we'll get started. Startup.
Strobe lights on.
Seatbelt fastened.
Taxi lights on. Cabin lights on. Landing lights on. Radio on. Transponder on.
Primary startup complete. Please connect to nearest tower, then complete
Control
your flight
switch
plan,
on.
then complete next checklist using command, checklist 2. Press 9 for radio frequency.
Okay, that voice you just heard is not part of the game. That's actually part of my voice attack. I've got it to tell me things to do after the plane turns on, so I remember what to do. But the last thing it told me to do was to press 9 to get the radio frequency of the airport that I'm in.
9. Combo box. Holic approach control 122.2.
Okay, so I'm at Holic approach control and it's 122.2. So I'll set the radio frequency now to get rid of that hiss.
Escape. Edit.
Set radio frequency.
Set frequency. Set frequency edit. 122. 122. Holic approach control. Edit.
SK961. We welcome you to our airport.
Okay, so we're now at the airport and
100 liters.
we're ready to go. So as you heard, all those switches, that was all done by voice attack as it was turning switches on. It does key presses for me. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through and show you how to get into the help section of the game, so you can learn all the keystrokes yourself. If you need to know anything, you can go in there at any time while you're flying or anything. Just don't do it while you're landing. You may come in a bit short and crash. As well as we're going to go through some plane settings and things like that. As this is your first training flight, there's a lot of info you may require. So, but to get into that buzzing noise you can hear is actually the battery. You can turn that down. It's normally quite loud. I have turned it down, but that's what that noise is. So to get into the help, you just press the Alt key and the letter H for Harry.
Help mode on. Tree view.
Okay, so we're now in the help mode, and as you heard, it's a tree view. So you can just arrow, tab, all sorts of things in this area. But right now we're just going to be using the arrow key, and we're going to go through the different items, which this gives you all the information about the game and the keys that you can use in this section. So I'm just going to press the arrow key down once.
Level 0. Map left paren 93 right paren. Closed.
Okay, so that's for the map. And it's got 93 items in it, and it's closed, as you heard. But we're not going to do anything in the map because that's a totally separate part of the game. It's not really part of this simulation.
Plane left paren 35 right paren. Closed.
Okay, now this is for the plane, and as you heard, it's got 35 items and it's closed. So we'll open that up and we'll quickly go through a few of the keystrokes. So you press the right arrow to open the tree.
Plane left paren 35 right paren. Open.
And then we arrow down again to the first item.
B-well on the ground. Activate/deactivate the brakes. Well airborne. Add the current location to favorites.
Okay, so that's press the letter B for Bob, and that will put on your brakes on the ground, and it will save things to favorites while you're in the air. Now that is your park brake, not your brakes to slow down the plane. Depending on your keyboard and your country layout, sometimes people's brake is actually the / key, and other times people's brake is the minus or hyphen or dash key on the top number of the keyboard, which in Australia it's actually the minus key, not the /. So we'll go to the next one.
F- report the currently set radio frequency.
Okay, F tells you, F for Fred, tells you your current radio frequency. So I just set mine to 122.2. So if I press the F key when I'm not in the help menu, it will tell me that frequency. So you can check what you're set to, just in case you're not set to the correct one for your airport. Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Control plus backspace dash sensor on /off.
Okay, Control plus backspace. Now that's for the sensor. Now the sensor is very important while you're on the ground, because it will tell you when you're getting close to the edge of your airport, or getting close to the edge of a runway or a taxiway. It has different beeps, so it'll start with a slow beep and moves all the way up to a solid beep. Well, solid sound, which means you're right on the edge of what you're doing if you're on a taxiway or a runway, and you don't want to be right on the edge. I will show those sounds shortly, and just a brief show that so you can hear what they sound like. But we'll move on to the next one.
Control plus B dash fasten slash unfasten the seatbelt.
Control plus B, that's to put your seatbelt on. I recommend doing that because if you go to take off without your seatbelt on, the computer will start yelling at you that your seatbelt is not fastened, and it can be very distracting while you're trying to take off. The first time it done it to me, I was trying to put the seatbelt on and couldn't remember the keystroke and ran off the end of the runway. So yeah, not a good thing to do. So make sure you put that on. We'll do a couple quick more just to show you, but this is where you can check every keystroke that's in the game basically.
Control plus E dash refuel.
Control E, that's how you refuel the plane. Now in these small planes, you refuel them yourself. You can just basically go to the Bowser, put in the liters you want, pump them in. But when you get into the larger planes, you have to actually contact the tower. They send out a truck and they fill it for you. So you will be waiting for that. But in the small planes, go right ahead and do it yourself. So Control E for that, E for egg. Okay, we'll do one more.
Control plus F dash extend slash retract the flaps.
Control F, that extends and retracts the flaps. So you press that and then you type in the number for the flap setting you want. All planes have different flap settings. I think the most I've seen is 6. So, and this plane has 3, which I'll show you shortly. One more.
Control plus K dash while on the ground. Report the GPS latitude semicolon while airborne. Consume a beverage.
Now that's Control plus K, and it says it'll report the latitude while you're on the ground, and while you're in the air it'll give you a beverage. But that's not implemented in the game yet, so don't try getting a beverage while you're flying. Doesn't actually work. So we'll just go back and I'll show you a couple more in the tree. So that's all the plane settings. So each of those is a different keystroke that does different things. So just scroll through them. There's 35 in there. But when you're in different windows, like if you're actually in the communicator window, which is where you talk to other people that are flying just by text, or you can do voice recordings, it actually gives you different items depending on the window that you're in as well. So I'll just close this by pressing the left arrow.
Plane left paren 35 right paren. Plane left paren 35 right paren. Closed.
Okay, and we'll scroll down to the next one by just pressing the arrow down.
Engines left paren 11 right paren. Closed.
Okay, so that's the engines. So there's all the different things controlling your engines in there. I'll just show you one of those quickly. So we'll open that by pressing right.
Engines left paren 11 right paren. Open.
And there's 11 in here.
Page up dash engine 1 on slash off.
So page up turns the engine on or off. So if you press page up once, it'll turn it on. You press it again, it'll turn it off. Now, as you get more engines, you'll have more. So page down will be for engine 2. And then you go into the sequence of keys. Like alt page up will be engine 3 and alt page down will be engine 4. Some planes can have up to 6 engines, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. The most I've ever flown with was 4 engines. So, but we'll go back again to and just go to the next
engines
one.
Engines left paren 11 right paren. Control slash steering left paren 11 right paren.
Okay,
Closed.
that's for your steering. So you can go through all those. It tells you what keys you need to steer with. So like the left right arrow will turn you left and right in the air as well as on the ground. But you've got to remember when you press those, they will be degrees. So if you're on the ground and you press the left arrow key, that will turn your wheels 1 degree to the left, and it locks it there. So when you let it go, it doesn't turn the wheel back. You have to actually press the right arrow to move it back that 1 degree. So if you press it 5 times and go 5 degrees, then to get back, you can. There's a shortcut key. I'm not sure. I think it's G. If you double press G quickly, that will set you back to 0. I told you I wasn't going to tell you from the left. I knew, but well, you'll just have to check that one. But if you hold the shift key and press the arrow keys, that will move you 10% increment. So if you want to turn it 10 degrees, you press and hold the shift and press the left key or the right key. Same with up, down. I will show you that as I'm taking off, because that's how I take off, is by using the shift and the down key. So we'll just go down to the next one.
On dashboard computer left paren 18 right paren.
And
Close.
that's all the onboard computer settings. So that tells you everything to turn everything on. And there's 18 in there.
Communicator left paren 2 right paren. Closed.
You got the communicator.
Other left paren 22 right paren. Closed.
And other. There's lots of different stuff in the other. I'll just quickly open that.
Other left paren 22 right paren. Tab dash switch to the next panel.
So tab switches you to the next panel on the screen. Most of the time you only have one or two. Like when you turn the communicator on, you'll have the dashboard, which is where I am now, and then you'll tab to the communicator. And then when you get in the larger planes, you actually have a navigation window as well, where you can put in all your waypoints and things.
Space dash repeat the last tower announcement / in a list or tree view of airports, in a list of checkpoints or in a list of the runway waypoints. Add the currently selected object to navigation.
That's your space bar, which is very important. As you heard, it's got lots of different things you do depending on where you are. But I'll explain things like that as we get to them. So rightio, we're going to now tab to the next section in this help window, which I believe is to search for keystrokes.
Search edit.
Yep, so you can type in what you're looking for here. So let's say you were looking for turning the radio on. You could type radio, and I'm guessing it will give you all the commands for the radio. Everything you can do, like F to hear your frequency, Control Shift F to turn it on. Maybe, I don't know if that is the correct key. But we'll move on to the next one, which should be the results for when you search. You just press, you type it in, press enter, and then just press tab to get to the result.
Results combo box.
And the next one is
Keystroke meaning. Read only edit. Less not set
keystroke
rating.
meaning. So if you're not sure of a keystroke, you can quickly come in here and then press the keys and make sure that that is what it is. So like to check your fuel level is the letter E for egg. And if I press that, it will tell you that.
E. Report the amount of fuel in the tank.
D is distance traveled, so you can check how far you've traveled on the ground or in the air. So if I press that, it'll tell you that.
D. Report distance traveled.
And F is for your radio frequency.
F. Report the currently set radio frequency.
So you can check all the keys. You can come in here and press keys all over the place. If the key doesn't do anything, it shouldn't tell you anything. So we'll move on to the next item by tabbing.
EDF. Sound overview combo box. Automatic operation completed.
Okay, this is the sound overview. So you can actually hear what sounds are. There's a very important one I'll show you in here, but we'll move down.
Course changed by specified amount. Steering angle of the wheels, wings, or nose. Takeoff or landing runway beneath the plane.
Okay, this is the important one, the takeoff sound when you're over the runway. So this is, you'll hear this when you take off, if you're still over the runway, and it's very important when you're landing. So I'm going to play this for a second, and then I'll explain what you need to do with this sound.
Space. Space.
So if you're coming into land, as soon as you hear that sound, that means you are over the runway. So you need to, and if you're coming into land, that's when you idle your plane back. So it stalls and lands on the runway. Very important. You will hear it when you take off as well. If there's runway left, when you get to the end of it, it'll keep playing. It's just while you're over the runway and not touching it. As soon as you touch it, that sound will stop. So, but that's your indicator to tell you're over the runway. I'll just do a couple other sounds just to show you.
Sensor warning 1 - you are near the edge of the taxiway or runway.
This is the sensor warning. So this is number 1. This is when you're quite a ways off the edge. This is the sound it will play. But remember, this will be a continuous beep. I'm just going to keep pressing the space bar to play it.
Space. 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 Space.
So that's what it will sort of sound like, maybe a little bit slower. And as you'll notice, it's the next one will be the sensor warning 2, but it'll be a slightly higher pitch.
Sensor warning 2 - you are very near to the edge of the taxiway or runway.
So this means you're getting closer.
Space. 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 Space.
And it'll beep faster like that.
Sensor warning 3 - you are at the very edge of the taxiway or runway. Space.
Now that's sensor
Space.
warning 3, that will stay on solid. And that's not what you want to hear. So you can go through all these sounds. I'm not going to go through any more, but you can go through all the sounds and find out what they are. So now the next one is a very important item. And when I tab to it, it's not actually going to tell you what it is. It's just going to tell you it's an edit field.
Edit. Contains text.
But this is actually your checklist for this plane. So as you scroll through these items, this is what you should do for this plane. Now, every plane is different. Most of the stuff is the same, but as you move up planes, you will get new items. Like this plane doesn't have ventilation or pressurization. So you won't hear that when you tab through here, but I'll just arrow down to the first item, and just so you can understand what I'm talking about.
Get to know the properties of your current airport. Vertical bar shift plus enter.
So this is what you should do first if you need to know about runways and things like that. So it's telling you to get to know the properties of your airport that you're currently at. You press shift and enter to open up the airport screen, and that has a lot of information on it about the runways, the taxiways, how you get to those runways. It tells you what taxiways you need to take to get there. Like you may have to go on Alpha, then turn onto Delta, and then onto Romeo, and then Yankee to get to runway 05. And that's how you find out how you get there. Now, the other thing it has is the descent map and waypoints. We will go through them a little bit later, but that's how you do that. You just press shift and enter, and it also has the information about the level of the airport, like how hard it is to get into the airport, and your radio frequencies for your towers. So I'll just move down to the next one.
Find out how many pilots there currently are at your airport. Vertical bar control plus shift plus enter.
Not quite as important, but it's to find out how many people are at the airport. So if somebody's talking on the radio, like I don't mean actually talking, if you can hear them doing their radio commands, you can actually see who's here by pressing control shift and enter, and then you can arrow through and it'll tell you where they are in the airport. This will become very important later on when airport collisions can happen. They don't actually happen at the moment, but they will be coming. So we'll move on to the next one.
Turn on the battery. Vertical bar control plus shift plus B.
Okay, now this is where it's telling you to do things in the sequence. So the very first thing you need to do is turn on the battery, which that's that buzzing sound you can hear in the background. I believe it's a fan keeping it cool. So the first thing you need to do is turn that on, because you can't power anything without the battery, so you can't turn anything else on. So this is telling you the order you should do things. Now this works for every plane. So we'll just go to the next item.
Turn on the lights. Vertical bar shift plus S, shift plus K, shift plus D, shift plus L.
So see, it actually tells you all the keys you need to press as well to do it. So that's to turn on all your lights, your cabin lights, your strobe lights, your landing lights, and so on. And it actually told you the keys to press. Doesn't tell you what the key does, but it tells you the keys to press. You can then go back to the key list and find out what they are. So we'll move on to the next one.
Turn on the on-dashboard computer. Vertical bar control plus shift plus K.
Okay, so it's saying the next thing you need to do is turn on the onboard computer, which is control shift plus K. So you turn that on. Without the computer, you can't do a lot of things. You can't do a flight plan and things like that. So I'll just do a couple of more of these quickly, just so you get the idea. But remember, do this in this sequence and do it for every new plane, and you can come back in here at any time.
Turn on the radio. Vertical bar control plus shift plus F.
So control plus shift plus F for Fred turns on the radio.
Find out what towers are in range. Vertical bar 9.
The number 9 key is to find out what towers are in range. Radio frequencies, like usually the airport you're at, you can get that, and there'll be like the air traffic control of the country or state or anything. But right now there is a bug with that. If you try connecting to the country tower without being told to do it by another tower, your game will crash. So don't try switching that on. It'll actually turn the game off completely and you'll have to start again. So that's number 9.
Establish a connection with your tower. Vertical bar Alt plus F.
So Alt plus F is to type in the number. Once you know what it is, like mine is 122.2, you press the...
Find out, establish a connection with your tower. Vertical bar Alt plus F.
Alt plus F for Fred, and then you can type in that number and press enter to lock it in. I'll just do 1 or 2 more and just so you can see.
Create a flight plan. Vertical bar F1.
So the next thing you should do is create a flight plan. I'm going to show you that very soon on how to do that.
Refuel. Vertical bar control plus E.
And then you need to refuel. Now when this game first started playing, the planes had no fuel in them whatsoever. So as soon as you turned the computer on, you used to get an alarm going off in your ear, which was very loud, telling you there was no fuel. But now they put between 100 litres and 350 litres into every plane, so you don't get that alarm anymore. But you do need to refuel before you take off.
Start the engines. Vertical bar page up.
See? And then it's telling you to start the engines.
Turn on the sensor, vertical bar control plus backspace.
Turn on the sensor. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is just a really good thing. It tells you everything you need to do step by step for each plane. So every time you get a new plane, come in here. All right, well, that's really it for there. I think the next item is like the rules page. It's not actually just rules, it's the documentation. So there is a lot of helpful information in there. So you might want to check that out. But I'm just going to escape out of here, and then we'll start getting this plane ready to do our first flight.
Escape, edit.
Okay, so next I'm going to show you the plane properties. So this actually gives you information because there's lots of important stuff in here as well. It gives you your minimum runway length to take off and land, your stall speed for your flaps and all that sort of stuff. So we'll quickly go through that. And then we'll set up a flight plan and get underway. So to bring up your plane properties is Control and Enter.
Control enter. Combo box. Pilot Roderberg 69 left paren 1 right paren.
Okay, so this we'll just arrow down and go through this. This actually has 4 windows, so you can tab through. The first one is the plane properties. The second one is your flight plan, which we don't have yet. The third one is the logbook for the plane, so how many hours it's flown, how many crashes you've had, and kilometers traveled, etc. Then the last one is it's the data about the flaps and things like that. It's only new, and it tells you your stall speeds for each of your flap settings and your throttle indicators. Like you've got each plane has different levels of throttle for different speeds. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it goes up to 6. So this plane I think only has 4, and each of those it'll tell you what the settings are for that. So like what percentage of your throttle it is. I'll show you that shortly, but we'll just start arrowing down through this plane properties. Some of it I'll go quickly through, others I'll actually talk about.
SKOTF 961 performance flight.
So that's just my flight number, and it's a performance flight. You'll actually have training flights.
Cessna C152.
The plane.
Transport plane propeller plane left paren 1 right paren dash borrowed.
Tells you what sort of plane it is. It's a propeller and it's borrowed.
Certified. Condition 100%. Last system check none.
You can do a system check. There's different keys for that.
Number of seats 2.
The 2-seater.
Number of passengers 0.
I've got no passengers.
Wingspan 10 meters.
There's a lot of information
Length
in here.
7 meters. Bass weight 1T. Current weight 1.1T.
I haven't put any fuel in yet. It'll get heavier when I put fuel
Cruising
in.
speed 204 kmph.
So its cruising speed's 204 kilometers an hour.
Maximum cruising range 1,280 kilometers.
That's how far you can go with a full tank of fuel.
Maximum cruising altitude 4,480 meters. Flap positions 0/3.
Okay, now this is your flap positions from 0 to 3. So every plane has flaps except for the Concorde. Concorde's definitely a different beast. Now, your flap positions are for taking off and landing, and it just makes your stall speed slower, so you don't stall when you're coming into land because I'll go through the landing speeds in a minute, but yeah, so this has got 3 settings from 0 to 3.
Base takeoff speed 110 kmph.
Okay, so you heard that. The base takeoff speed in this plane is 110 kilometers an hour, so you shouldn't try taking off until you get to that at least.
Base landing speed 110 kmph.
Landing speed's the same, and that's why you need the flaps, because you're about to hear the stall speed of the plane, and you'll hear that it's actually above those speeds.
Stall speed 120 kmph.
Okay, so the stall speed is 120 kilometers an hour. What that means is if you are at 120 kilometers an hour or below, you will fall out of the sky. You don't have any lift and you will just start dropping rapidly. So when you set the flaps, that changes that stall speed. I'll come back and show you that shortly because I'll actually set the flaps and then I'll come back in and show you that changes to tell you what your current stall speed is. So, but basically you need to set, there's a few more settings for the flaps, so I'm going to go to that now.
Current takeoff speed 110 kmph. Nose angle when taking off 4-7-10.
Now that's your nose angle when you're taking off. That's either 4 degrees, 7 degrees or 10 degrees to take off. Anything below that or above that, you will have insufficient lift and you won't take off.
Minimum flap position when taking off 1.
Okay, so this is the minimum flap position when taking off is 1. So that means you have to set your flaps to 1 to take off, which will reduce your stall speed, because as you heard, the takeoff speed is 110 and the stall speed is 120. So if you tried taking off at 110 without the flaps set, you won't have enough lift to take off. So when you set the flaps to 1, I believe that brings your stall speed down to 110, so you can then take off at that speed. So we'll just move on.
Minimum takeoff runway length: 408 meters.
So that's your minimum takeoff runway length. So see, this is very important information. Whenever you get a new plane, you should come in here and check all of this so you know exactly what your plane can do.
Current landing speed: 110 kmph.
So there's the landing speed is 110.
Minimum flap position when landing: 2.
Now it's telling you your minimum flap when landing is 2. So that will actually give you a lower stall speed, which I'll show you those shortly. So flaps 1 is 110. So I think at flaps 2, that's like 100 kilometers an hour. So you're definitely safe to land at that. But we'll just move on.
Minimum landing runway length: 365 meters.
And your minimum landing runway is 365. So takeoff is 408 because it takes you a little bit longer to get up to speed. And the airports for these planes is a 500 by 500 meter square block of a paddock or a field, and so you've definitely got enough room to take off.
Fuel tank capacity: 1,382 liters.
And that's really all we need to know in here. There's a lot more information. You can check that out yourself, but that's the important stuff. So I'll just tab over to the data section so I can show you the flap settings and what the stall speeds will become.
Combo box: flight plan. Combo box: logbook. Combo box: technical data.
Right, the technical data. Now, the top is the flap settings and the bottom one is the throttle. I'll just show you the flaps and then quickly show you the throttle, but we're not going to go into the throttle, so I don't actually use that. So we'll just arrow down.
Stall speeds: flaps 0: 120 kmph.
So your stall speed with your flaps not set, so at 0, is 120 kilometers an hour. So at 120 you will fall. 121 you're safe.
Flaps 1: 110 kmph.
So at flaps 1 your stall speed changes to 110.
Flaps 2: 100 kmph.
And there we go, flaps 2, which is your landing. So you're safe above 100 kilometers an hour.
Flaps 3: 95 kmph.
And flaps 3 is 95 kilometers an hour. The only reason you probably go to flaps 3 is if it was a short runway and you needed to slow down more to land so you could get quicker to stop. So that's why you do that. So okay, let's start getting this plane set up to get off the ground. So the first thing we will do is set up a flight plan. Now to do that, there's a number of ways you can do it. But what I do beforehand is I set my destination. So that's set in my computer, and then that way I can just select it quickly in the flight plan. Otherwise you have to scroll through all the airports to find it, or you can filter them to find the airport you want to go to. But if you set the destination, then it's already there and it will be highlighted when you go in. Now you can get into the airport list by just pressing F8 on your keyboard. So that's F8.
Tree view.
And it brings up a tree view. So this is all the countries, and you can scroll through and find them. So I'll just arrow down.
Asia left, 60 right, closed.
So Asia has 60 airports.
Europe left, 466 right,
Europe
closed.
has 466. So if we're in Europe, we'd have to go through all those airports to find the one we want. There is a quicker way to do it. So I'll just escape out of that.
Edit.
Now if you press Control F8,
combo box, Slovakia Holic -Ls EHL left, 0 kilometers right,
that actually brings up the airports in a list nearest to furthest from you. So as you heard the first one,
Czech Slovakia Holic -Ls EHL left, 0 kilometers right,
that's the airport I'm at. So it says it's 0 kilometers. Now, if I arrow down one, that's my next nearest airport.
Czech Republic Reklav-LKBA left, 17 kilometers 98 left, 1 minute right,
So it's 17 kilometers away from me. The next one
Czech Republic Kijov-LKKY left, 21 kilometers 3 left, 1 minute
is
right,
21 kilometers away. So they're in the Czech Republic, but I'm going to fly to Slovakia Senik, I believe it is, which is the next one.
Slovakia Senica -Ls ESE left, 22 kilometers 140 right, 1 minute right,
Yep, so that's Slovakia Senica, which is the airport I want to go to, which is 22 kilometers away. But you can keep going if you want to go to a further airport.
Slovakia Trnava/Valoraz-Ls ETR left, 47 kilometers 143 right, 3 minutes right,
So, and it's giving you the degrees it is as well.
Czech Republic Zilin / Atrocivus - LKOT left, paren 52 kilometers, 33 right, 3
But-
minutes right,
but
paren.
we'll go back and select the
Slovakia
other one.
Dunavas, Slovakia Seneca - LSE left, paren 22 kilometers, 140
Okay,
right,
so
1 minute
now
right,
that
paren.
I have it highlighted, all I have to do to select that is to press the space bar. Now in the small planes, because you don't have a navigation computer, that will just set it into the computer and close that window. But in the larger planes, you can add multiple waypoints and airports to your flight navigation computer, but this one doesn't do that. So that window will stay open in the larger plane. But okay, so we're going to set that as our destination by pressing space.
Space destination set, edit.
Okay, so destination set. So now we're going to contact the tower and get this flight plan set. So F1, so the F1 key on your keyboard will open up your tower to talk to them.
Combo box, plan dash, I want to create a flight plan.
So as you heard, the first one is I want to create a flight plan. There's only 3 items when you're on the ground here.
Repair dash, I need repairs.
So I just arrowed down to that, and that's if you need repairs. Maybe if you bumped into the hangar or something, you may need your plane fixed. And that's another thing. I didn't start in the hangar. I have that to start outside. So if you are in the hangar, make sure you move out of the hangar before you try and take off. I'm not doing that. I probably should have done it that way, but I'm not doing that. So you make sure you get out of the hangar. So you can find out what the keys are for opening the hangar door and all that later on. I will, when I'm doing stuff for direction and things shortly, I will tell you how to do that. And the next one
Takeoff dash, asking for takeoff clearance.
is takeoff clearance, and there's no more, so I can't arrow down. So we'll go back up to flight plan.
Repair dash, I need repairs. Plan dash, I want to create a flight plan.
So now we press enter.
Enter. Call sign read only edit.
Now
SKOT
this brings up
F961.
another window. Now that what you heard then is my call sign and everything. So through this window you tab to get to the next selection and then arrow to choose a selection. So I'll tab to get to the next one.
Select destination combo box. Slovakia Seneca - LSE.
Now as you heard, select destination, and it's already on the airport that I want to go to, which was Seneca. So but if I want to choose another one, I can. I just arrow up or down.
Slovakia Reznany - LSERY. Slovakia Seneca - LSE. Slovakia Spiskanova - LSV.
But I'm just going to leave it on Seneca
Slovakia
because that's
Seneca -
where I want to go.
LSE.
And so if I hadn't have selected that as my destination, I would have had to scroll through all these airports to find the one that I want. So right, we'll tab to the next section.
Filter edit.
Filter, so you can actually type in, if you do know the name of the airport, you can type it in here and that should filter it for you, make it a little bit quicker. So I'll tab to the next section.
Flight description edit.
Now your flight description, you can type in whatever you like here. Like you might want to tell people where you're flying from and where to. So I might say I'm flying from Hollock to Seneca with 25 chickens on board. That's totally up to you what you want to do. Okay, so I'm not going to do a description, but this will show on the website. I haven't actually seen where, but apparently it shows on the online website when people look up on the flight plans on there. So I'll tab to the next section.
Requesting combo box. Navigated flight.
Now this is what you're requesting, the type of flight. Right now you only have a navigated flight or a direct flight. The navigated flights aren't working correctly in the game yet because, as I said, it is a beta. So you should always probably try and get a direct flight. Or the other thing is you may not get a direct flight. Like Lucas may tell you your flight plan's accepted but direct flight not allowed. But that's not working properly, so just fly direct anyway until there's an update that fixes that. So I'm just going to arrow down to select direct flight.
Direct flight.
And then I tab to the next one, which should be to request the flight.
Request flight button.
There's some different things in there when you're actually in the game and playing. You can actually tick a box to say that you want to pick up passengers and things like that. So this does change. So right, I'm on the request flight, so I'll press enter now, and then the radio will tell us if we've been accepted and what our flight will be.
Enter.
SK961. Flight plan accepted. Set transponder to 2161.
Okay, so our flight's been accepted and there was no objection, so that's fine. We can do a direct flight. Now, you heard at the end he said to set your transponder to a number, which your transponder is so they can track you in the air. You type a number in there and that squawks your number and they know who you are. Now, don't worry if you didn't hear it. You can play it back. just by pressing the space bar, it will play the last radio message. But if there's another radio message in between, it will be gone. But you can still find it. But I'm just going to play the message back just so I can get that number again so I can set it into my computer.
Space.
SK961. Flight plan accepted. Set transponder to 2161.
Okay, so I've got to set my transponder for that. So set transponder.
Set transponder code. Set transponder code edit. 217761.
And press enter.
2161. Enter. Edit.
Now that's my transponder set and they'll know who I am. Okay, so now we're now set up ready to go. So that's the flight plan. So we're now going to start the plane and turn on the extra systems. So when you turn on the battery, it only has enough power to turn on the bare minimum of things. So once you start the engine, you have full power, and that's when you can turn on all your other systems. So when I do my voice command, you'll hear the engine start, and then after the engine's fully running and fully generating power, it will turn on the other systems. That's not me doing it, it's my voice attack doing it. But when you do it, you just press the shortcut keys to turn on all these systems. And in that thing that I showed you in the help menu, the step-by-step section, that has all the things you need to turn on and the keystrokes to do it. Right, I'll get this plane going. Final startup.
Page up, blank. Page down, blank.
Storm
Temperature
radar
control
on. Stall indication on. TCAS on. Sensor on.
Final startup complete. If you need to collect passengers, use the command passenger checklist. If no passengers, use command taxi checklist for takeoff procedure. Now please set cabin temperature.
Set temperature. Set temperature combo box. 18, 19, 20, 21. Enter.
Temperature
Edit.
set.
Okay, so you heard that voice again. That's my voice attack telling me to do that. That's what I put in to remind me of things. And the last thing was setting the temperature of the plane. You don't want a cold plane, especially if you've got passengers on board. You have to press the key. I had that turn on automatically for me at the end of my command. So you heard it turn on multiple things. So that you have to do that manually if you don't have any other way of doing it. So just make sure all that gets turned on because a lot of it is important. I'm not going to explain what everything is because you can go through and look at that yourself. So you can hear the plane running. That I've got the engine turned down very low, but normally they're very loud, but you can do that in your sound settings in the game. So I recommend doing that to get the different sound settings. Right, so we're now running and the plane is all set up. We're ready to go basically. All I need to do now is contact the tower and then I'm pretty much ready to go to the next airport. But what I do first, and this is what you will need to do if you're in the hangar, you need to open the hangar doors, which I'm not sure of the key. You'll have to check that key. It'll be in the help section under the different areas. And you've got to check and make sure where the door is and what angle you're facing. So I'll check the direction I'm facing now. And I'm doing this by pressing the right bumper on my controller. There is a keyboard key that does it as well. I'm not sure what it is.
North.
So I'm facing north. So if you're in the hangar, I'm guessing you'll be facing the same direction. You'll be facing north, but you'll be behind a door, so you need to open the door. You need to throttle up a little bit, move outside the hangar before you try and take off. Because you don't want to try and take off from inside the hangar. So just remember that if you are in the hangar. You can check if you're in the hangar by pressing other buttons. Now on my controller it's the X and the Y button on the controller that tells me where I'm located in the airport. So I'll do the north-south, which I'm not sure if that's longitude or latitude. I'm not an expert on maps. So I'll press that now, which is my X key.
100 main area.
So it's telling me I'm 100 main area. See, if you're in the hangar, it would tell you a different coordinate and it would say in hangar. So that's north-south. Now I'll do east-west.
200 main area.
And it's 200 in the main area, east-west. So there's coordinates all over the airport. So the airport's 500 by 500. So I believe the bottom left corner of the airport would be the most to the area, which would be 00. and the far right top corner would be 500 by 500. So we're at
100 main area.
100
200 main area.
by 200. So we're 100 to the north of the back fence, and we're 200 to the east of the left fence. Was that? No, west is left. So
200 main area. 100 main area.
and I know that I need 408 meters of runway to take off. So at 100 facing north, that's the direction I'm going to be taking off. So I'm at 400 meters left, and I know I can take off in that. So I'm not too worried about that. But you can also taxi out and move to a spot where you've got longer runway if you need it, and get into the right spot to take off. Now the other thing you can check is your speed.
0.
And that's my left bumper on my controller, and I'm doing 0 at the moment. But there is other things that tells you. So I'm going to set the flaps now and quickly show you that in the plane properties how it changes. So remember before it said it was 120, so let me set the flap. Set the flaps.
Set flap position. Set
So
flap position.
our
Edit.
takeoff flaps are 1, so we'll set it to 1
1. Enter. Edit.
and press enter.
Flaps
Now without
set.
the engine running you can't set those, so they're set now. And if I now press my speed, which you have, that's the letter R on your keyboard,
0 flaps at 1.
it's telling me I'm at 0 and my flaps are 1. Before you take off you always check that and make sure your flaps are set to the correct flaps, because I nearly took off once without the flaps, and yeah, so very important, check that. You have a check thing, like I always check my direction, check my speed and flaps and everything, and check my later on you get flight modes and taxi modes in your planes, so you need to check that you're in the right setting for those. So right, I'll just quickly open up the plane properties again with control enter,
Control enter. Combo box.
and
Pilot
I'll
bottom
arrow
69
down
left,
to
run
the
1 right
current
red.
stall speed.
SKO Cessna C1 transport plane certified. Condition 1 HUD last system. Number of seats colon, number of passenger wingspan colon, length colon, sub bass weight colon, current weight colon, what cruising speed colon, maximum cruising, flap positions colon 1/3, bass takeoff speed colon, bass landing speed colon, what stall speed colon 110 kmph.
See, now before that said 120, now it says 110. So you can always check what the flaps are, but you do have that data as well, the technical data, which tells you what it'll be anyway. And it tells you what your speeds are for that. So you can always just tab over to that quickly if you need to know it as you come into land or something like that.
Escape. Edit.
So right, we're basically ready to take off. So I'll explain other things as we're taking off, but just as a quick thing now, I'm going to set my throttles to full, which is level 4 I believe. And then I'll speed down the runway, I'll get to my 110 kilometers an hour. I will then press my shift and down arrow to get to the 10% lift. Nothing more, because this plane has a 4, 7 or 10 degrees for taking off. You can take off at 5 or 6 or 9, whatever, anywhere in between that 4 and 10 degrees. But I tend to take off at the 10 degrees. Most planes, I've never had a plane that won't take off at 10 degrees. So to do that I just press shift and down once, but if you want to press the arrow and go up in 1 degree increments, that's totally up to you. So, but that's what I'm going to do, and I'm ready to do that. So I'm going to take off my park brakes, very important because you can't go anywhere while they're on, and then I'm going to get permission to take off, and then we'll get started. Park brake off.
Parking brakes off.
Okay, now I contact the tower with F1 again to get my clearance.
Combo box. Plan dash I want to change the flight plan. Repair dash I need repairs. Take a dash asking for takeoff clearance. Enter.
SK961. You are cleared to take off.
Okay, so we're right to take off. So again, you want to check everything,
R. 0 flaps at 1.
and we'll check our
North.
direction
North.
and our throttles.
0 colon throttle colon 0% colon throttle preset 0 colon colon.
Right, so there's lots of information in there later on. This plane doesn't have much at all because it's very basic. So what I'll be doing is when I get my throttle set to full, I'll be going down the runway, and then I just start pressing the R to keep checking my speed. So
R. 0 flaps at 1. R. 0 flaps at 1.
I'll just keep pressing that and I'll hear the speed, because these do pick up speed pretty quickly. And then when I get to, like I said, above 110, I'll press and hold the shift key and press the down arrow once to get me at 10 degrees, and then I should take off and then you'll hear me doing other things as I get in the air, because it's very important once you take off to pull in your landing gear, things like that. This plane doesn't have that sort of landing gear, it's always fixed down, but you need to set your flaps back to 0 because you can damage them. So but let's get going and we'll get this thing on the move. Full throttle.
Throttle preset 4.
Okay, we're off and rolling. You can hear me rolling on the ground. Propeller's speeding up.
R. 27 flaps at 1. 39 flaps at 1.
See, we're speeding up quite
55
quickly.
flaps at 1. R. 68 flaps at 1.
As soon as I get to
84 flaps at 1.
110, we'll go.
R. 96 flaps at 1. 104 flaps at 1. 112 flaps at 1.
There's that runway sound, and that other sound is to tell me that I'm going on an angle.
Takeoff successful.
If you weren't
Out of airport.
If you weren't doing something and you hear that sound, you want to check what it is. So, right, now I'm going to turn off my lights and stuff. Flight mode.
Landing lights off. Taxi lights off.
Flight mode is set.
Set flap position. Set flap 188 flaps at 1.
Check that you're above your stall speed.
SK961. Climb to 85.
0.
And we've set the flaps to 0. Now, you heard the radio tell me something then. You can, if you missed it, you can find out again.
Space.
SK961. Climb to 85.
So he's telling me to climb to altitude 85, which is 850. Add a 0 to the end of whatever they tell you. I'm not actually going to go to that height because I don't need to. I'm going to check my
630.
altitude. I'm at 630
457 above ground.
and 457 above ground. Now I'm going to check my direction. You'll have to find out what key does that. It's A on my my controller.
144 right at 144.
So it's telling me I've got to go 144 degrees to the right to travel to
10,
my next airport.
23,
So I'm
32,
turning.
42, 52, 61, 71, 80, 90, 146 right at 100, 102, 112,
Gotta go another
121, 21
46.
right at 146,
I
131,
gotta go to
144 right at
146.
146, 4 right at 146,
I'm going to go 4 degrees. So I'm
3 right at
just
146,
doing it slowly
1 right at
now.
146, turn right at 146, 1 right at 146, dead ahead at 146, 1 right at 146, 1 right at 140, dead ahead at 146, dead ahead at 146, dead ahead at
Right, we're
146.
dead ahead at 146. So I can now check the distance to my airport by pressing the B key on my controller.
23 kilometers, Seneca 6 minutes,
So it's 23 kilometres and 6 minutes at this speed,
205,
which I'm doing 205 kilometres an hour at 90% throttle.
90 colon throttle colon 90% colon throttle preset 4 colon.
Check my altitude again.
468 above ground, 630,
Now the 630 is above sea level
468 above ground.
and the 468 is above ground. The ground level will always be different to the sea level unless you're flying over water.
22 kilometers, Seneca 6 minutes.
Right, so we've got to get a few things in, but the first thing I want to do now is the airport I'm going to, it's close, so I'm going to change to the radio frequency of that airport. So to bring up your destination airport, you press Alt and Enter.
Alt enter, combo box, pilot Roderberg 69 left,
Then I can arrow down and find out what the frequency of the airport is.
SKOTF 900, Cessna C152 LSPSE-Seneca.
So that's for
Come
Seneca.
up without maintenance services left, paren 1 right, paren. Height above sea dash level 192 meters. Difficulty colon 1. Approach control colon 125.3.
So I've got to change to 125.3.
Escape, edit.
Set radio frequency.
Set frequency, set 1, 2, 5, 125, P 3. And Seneca approach control, edit.
SK961. Welcome to our airspace.
Because we were close, we're already in contact. I've got my airport set to 45 kilometres away, so if I'm inside that range, they'll talk to me.
19 kilometers, Seneca 5 minutes.
So we got 19 kilometres until we get there, and 5
Dead
minutes,
ahead at 146.
and it's still dead ahead. So we just
418 above ground.
check our altitude.
630.
Always check your
205.
altitude,
146.
your
205.
speed. You need to keep in things. But there are other keys to check things. I'm going to check and see if there's anything in front of me at my altitude. Nearest object.
616 kilometers vertical bar dash Suvidal 976 meters vertical bar 3 hours, 0 minutes.
So it's 600 kilometres away, so I'm pretty safe. I'm only travelling 20 kilometres, so but there is a key for that. You'll have to find out what the key is. I'm not sure what it is.
Dead ahead at 146.
But you always have to keep checking and make sure you're in the right direction, because these little planes do drift a little bit and you do correct them. If it's only 1 degrees, I don't panic too much about it. But okay, so as you saw, you can check out things about the airport that you're going to. So Alt, Enter, brings up your destination airport that's in your flight plan. So I'm going to bring that back up and we're going to check out the descent map.
Alt enter, combo box, pilot Roderberg 69 left, paren
So
right,
the
paren.
first window is the airport information, so that tells you runways and everything. This one doesn't have a runway, so you press tab to get to the descent map.
Combo box, descent map.
Now this tells you all your altitude, so there's The most important one is the safe altitude, the same safe circle around the airport. I'm going to check that first.
Height above sea dash level 192 meters. Same altitude safe circle 0.3 kilometers.
So the same altitude safe circle is 0.3 kilometers. So 300 meters around the airport is the same altitude as the airport. So you're safe from there in to get down to below 20 meters.
2 kilometers safe altitude 225 meters, which is 33 meters above ground.
So that one you've got to be 33 meters. So these are safe circles. You might be safe on the angle you're coming in, but there may be a mountain in that area or a hill in that area that's higher. So you always have to be above that altitude just in case you turn into it.
5 kilometers safe altitude 279 meters, which is 87 meters above ground. 10 kilometers safe altitude 386 meters, which is 194 meters above ground. 15 kilometers safe altitude 539 meters, which is 347 meters above ground.
So you can scroll through all them. That goes to 150. So I think we're safe. But you can. There is also a key you can press to check that as well. I'll check that now.
Escape. Edit.
I'll
Escape.
get out of that menu. Safe altitude.
15 kilometers safe altitude 539 meters, which is 347 meters above
So
ground.
it says I should be 347 meters
294
above.
above ground.
I'm not in that. I know it's safe to go
10
the way
kilometers
I'm
Seneca 3
going.
minutes. Dead ahead at 146.
I know I'm safe at this height because I've checked nearest object. Nearest object.
608 kilometers vertical bar dash dash dash.
So I know I'm safe, but you can't rely on that. If I've got to
minutes.
turn, I may turn into that hill. So you always should be above that safe altitude. So you just keep checking everything.
334 above ground.
See, now I'm 334. The hills I was flying over's gone down.
630.
Most of the stuff you do, anything it tells you to do, like that 850 he told me to do, that's above sea level, not above ground level.
17.266. 8.1 kilometers Seneca 2 minutes.
All right, I'm going to start slowing down. Let me just pause this for a minute.
Paused.
Right, I'm just going to pause that for a second because I want to explain this quickly before I actually do it, because I need to do it immediately. Now, when I slow down to come into the airport, basically what I do is I cut my engines to idle. I then start slowing down. I set the flaps as I get into a closer speed, because you can't turn your flaps on at high speed. You will damage them. So you've got to turn them on maybe 50 or 60 kilometers an hour above the flap speed. So I just do that as I'm slowing down, and I keep it set to that. I keep it at idle until I get to the speed that I want to land at. So what I'm going to be doing in this plane, because it doesn't have spoilers or anything, so I can force myself onto the ground, I'm going to get close to the stall speed. Now, the minimum flaps in this for landing is 2, and the stall speed was 100. So I'm going to get down to between 101 and 103 kilometers an hour. So I will be turning my stall alarm off, because that will scare the daylights out of you when you're coming in. Once you get to just above stall speed, that alarm goes off. So I'm going to turn that off as soon as I go back on, and I'm going to set my throttles to idle and start slowing down, because we're 8 kilometers out from the airport. So once I slow down to about 100 kilometers an hour, that's going to make us very slow, and it's going to take quite some time to get in, but I've got to do that. I just wanted to pause the game so I could explain this and not be panicking while I'm coming into land. So I will unpause the game now, and we will finish getting in for landing. So here we go.
Paused. Resumed.
So I'm going to set my engines to idle.
Throttle preset 0.
I'm going to turn off that stall speed warning.
Control
Stall
shift key.
indication off.
Okay.
197.
Now keep checking
194.
your speed. Now I'm going to set the flaps. Set the flaps
Set flap 2.
to 2.
Enter. Edit. 176. 174. 6.8 kilometers Seneca 2 minutes.
And I'm going to get permission
Flaps
to
set.
land. So I'm going to press
Combo
F1.
box. Right dashable. Land dash asking for landing clearance. Enter.
SK961. Landing clearance granted.
Always get permission to land. When you're in runways and stuff, you've got to get allocated
6.2
runway.
kilometers. 139 flaps at 2.
Right, so-
136 flaps at 2.
Now that we're getting closer to this stall speed, I'm going to have to pay attention
129 flaps at 2.
and make sure I choke the engines off at that speed. You'll learn about choking the engine off.
120 flaps at 2. 118
Right,
flaps at
let
2.
me just focus on this.
115 flaps at 114, 113 flaps at 112 flaps at 111 flaps at 110 flaps at 109 flaps at 108 flaps at 107 flaps at 106 flaps 105 100 100 choked off dash to 103 flaps at 2.
Right, I've choked off at 103. That's safe. But if you get to 100, you'll fall out of the sky. Choke.
5.2 kilometers Seneca 3 minutes.
So we've got 5.2
One
kilometres.
left at 145.
See?
One left at 145.
We've gone off one to the left, so we've got to turn back to the right just to get it back
One
on
left at
track.
145. One left at 145. One left at 145. One left at 145. Two left at 145.
Oh, I've got to go to the
One right
left
at
actually, sorry.
145. One right at 145. Dead ahead at 145.
Right, we're dead ahead
4.6
again.
km, 103 flaps at 2.
So I'm going to get
419
down the
above ground.
altitude as well. We've got to come in. I'll check my altitude. Safe altitude.
5 kilometers, safe altitude 279 meters, which is 87 meters above, 355 above ground.
So I can be 87 meters
335
above ground, but I'm going to get down to about 100.
above ground, 307 above ground, 299, 4.1 kilometers, Seneca 2 minutes, 281 above ground.
So you got to be prepared and do all this early.
248 above ground.
You got to be ready to come
236
in
above
and
ground,
land.
226 above ground, 218 above ground, 206 above ground, 196 above ground, 188 above, 180 above ground, 172 above, 164, 3.7 kilometers, Seneca 2 minute, 160 above ground, 150 above ground, 140 above ground, 130 above ground, 122 above ground, 114 above ground, 82 above ground,
Woo!
87 above ground, 91 above ground, 95, 97 above ground,
Bit of a hill
103
there.
above ground, 106
Right.
above ground,
We're at 106. I'm not going to head down. When I get a bit
3.2 kilometers,
closer,
Seneca 1 minute.
once I get to about a kilometre out, I'll head down to about 60 metres above the ground. But I'm not going to go into landing altitude of just below 20 metres until I am at less than 300 metres from the airport. That's the safe altitude. Never go in before that, because you will hit a hill or something like that.
2.5 kilometers, Seneca 1 minute.
So okay, when I go in, as soon as I hear that runway beep to know I'm at the runway, I'm going to hit the engines to idle and then just let the plane stall. So as soon as it gets to below 100 kilometers an hour, the plane will stall and land. And then I'm going to hit the brakes and stop before the plane runs into the runway or off the runway or something like that.
2.0 kilometers, Seneca 1 minute. Dead ahead at 145.
So keep checking that you're still in line with the
Dead ahead at
airport.
145.
So we're still dead ahead.
103 flaps at 2.
Our speed's right.
120 above ground.
Come down a
107,
little bit more.
113 above ground. 1.6 kilometers, Seneca 0 minute. 145. 145. 1.1 right at 146.
Alright, so I've moved off a little bit. I'm going to move back.
1 right at 146. 1 right at 146. Dead ahead at 146.
Alright.
1.3 kilometers, Seneca 0 minutes.
So once I get to about a kilometre in, I'm going to move down to about 60 metres above the ground.
1.1 kilometer, dead ahead at 146. 103 flaps at 115 above ground. 115. 1.0 kilometers, Seneca 0 minutes. 0.9
Right, let's
115
head
above ground.
down.
107 above, 197 above, 93 above, 89 above, 83 above, 79 above, 75 above, 69 above, 65 above ground, 61 at 0.7 kilometers, Seneca
Right,
0
so
minutes.
now when I get to about 0.3, that's when I'm going to dive down to anywhere between 10 and 20 metres.
0.4 kilometers, Seneca 0 minutes. 0.4 kilometers, Seneca 0. 0.4 kilometers, Seneca 0.3 kilometers, Seneca 0.3
Right,
kilometers.
now I'm
55
gonna
above
go
ground,
down.
51 above ground, 45 above ground, 41 above ground, 33 above ground, 27 above
Air
ground,
force.
21 above ground, 15 above ground, 9 above ground,
Whoa.
11 above ground,
There
11
we
above
go.
ground.
Now as soon as I hear that runway sound, I'll press and turn the engines to idle.
Main area.
Throttle preset 0.
There we go. Wait till it stalls.
Landing successful.
And we're on the ground. Now I'll hit the brakes, which mine is the
Dash.
minus sign. Don't hold them on solid. Just keep letting them off.
Dash. Dash. 24 flaps at 2.
Check
Dash.
your speed.
Dash. 15 flaps at 2. Dash.
We're getting there.
Dash. 8 flaps at 2.
Alright, now I'll just let the plane roll. And there we go.
Flight
That's a
completed.
safe landing. It was all very quick. Sorry about how quick that came on, but when you're doing a short flight like that, it
Flight
is really
evaluation
quick.
dialog. Edit. Contains text.
Right, now here's the flight evaluation. You get this after every flight. This has got nothing in it, unless I got penalties, which I wouldn't for these airports.
Successful flight.
So it's a successful flight.
Flight length: 29 kilometers.
So I flew 29 kilometres.
Duration: 10 minutes.
Took me 10 minutes to fly that.
Points: 0.
I got 0
Earnings:
points,
0.
0
Minor
earnings,
crashes: 0.
no crashes or minor,
Penalty points: 0.
no penalty points. So,
Blank,
and
blank,
that's
blank,
it.
blank.
So it's a good successful flight. Now you get 0 points, 0 money. You're in a training flight, so you
Enter.
get nothing.
Dashboard.
So that's pretty much it.
204 main area. 306 main area.
What I normally do now is I set up for the next flight before I'll start doing anything. So what I'll do is I might turn to the east or the west. So if I turn to the west, I'd turn to 270 degrees, which I'm currently at
146.
146 degrees. So I'd turn to 270 degrees. I'd head to the edge of the runway till I was about, I don't know, 50 metres off the edge. I'd then turn back around to 90 degrees, facing east, and then I'd stop the plane, and then once I'm set up ready to go again, I would take off to the east and go to the next airport. So you just do the whole process again. But I hope that's given you a good indication of how to do things. I will be doing more. The next plane is the Piper Arrow. I'm going to do a tutorial for that because it has a few more things in it. Not much more. So you can go and listen to that. This is going to be in a list of videos for these, and I'm going to do right up to the category 3 planes, which that gets a lot more in depth, and I hope I can keep up with that. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you need any questions answered, just ask in the comments. Now, I am part of the Blind Gaming Club. We're a group of people that play lots of games together, not just Eurofly 3. So if you're interested, there'll be a link in there to our website, which has then a link to our Discord server and everything like that. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, bye.